Hey guys, so RWBY Ice Queendom has dropped with the most confusing premiere schedule that I've seen in quite a long time. Even though I dropped RWBY the show a while ago, I still decided to give this a chance. The original content aspects intrigued me, and I'm always up for some more psychological madness. That and none of RWBY's writers directly writing on the anime is a positive in its favor in my eyes. So let's see how Japan does RWBY with its first official anime. Looking at the first 3 episodes. Episode 1 is pretty much what I was expecting. It's mostly some of the trailers and some of Volume 1 spliced together in a recap. But it does open with a scene that I consider pleasant. After the rundown on the whole world of Remnant was given, the scene changes to RWBY Rose talking to her mother's grave. She talks about how excited she is that Yang is going to Beacon. Although RWBY herself is a little frustrated because her grades at Signal aren't good and she really wants to be a huntress alongside her sister. Yang pulls up in her motorcycle and RWBY happily runs over to her sister to give her a hug, with Yang asking what she was talking to Mom about. RWBY gives a reply and Yang thanks her for it, ending off with Yang looking fondly at Summer's grave with the camera panning off. The reason why this deserves a mention is if any of you guys know the current state of RWBY, these two really haven't acted like family in quite a long time, so this was just pleasant to see, them being sisters for once. Anyways, now it's time for Weiss to get some focus, as it cuts to what is essentially an extended version of the White trailer, recontextualized as Weiss passes by her brother Whitley to go take the final test, with her father and sister watching as she fights the night with everything she's got. I'll admit this fight looks pretty cool, and it was very clear where the budget was put for this episode, and making everything look 5 times more brutal looking. As Weiss readies her rapier, it surprisingly cuts to what is essentially a remade version of the Black trailer, Blake and Adam trying to hijack a train. This plays in tandem with the rest of Weiss's fight against the Knight, which made me wonder if there would be increased focus on the dynamic between Weiss and Blake, as I saw the rest of their fights play out. Blake abandons the White Fang once more, and then there's this extended added scene on, where her master Adam asserts that once Blake sees more of the world, she'll know that the White Fang is in the right. I like your confidence, good sir. And then it is time for the Volume 1 recap as it opens to a sprawling cityscape, with RWBY wandering around the city, totally losing track of time. Having too much fun. And don't think I don't see a Black Rock shooter. I totally do. Anyways, then RWBY heads into a dust shop to find a present for Yang, and completely gets distracted by a weapons magazine, with Yang and Tai surprisingly wondering where she is. And she gets so absorbed in her music and the weapons magazine she fails to realize that the place is getting robbed. One of the goons comes up to get her attention, and RWBY asks if he's robbing her. He says yes, and then she sends him flying into a table. I will always find this scene funny no matter how many times it's redone or remade, especially with Roman's nonchalant expression. With that, the redone fight is on. The fight basically goes the exact same way as in Volume 1, so there's only 2 things I'll take note of here. 1 is the fight looks really pretty and well done, like the Weiss versus Knight fight. And 2, Shaft actually animates RWBY's weapon Crescent Rose transforming. Nice attention to detail there, Shaft. After all of the fighting shenanigans, RWBY is officially accepted into Beacon at the behest of Professor Ozpin. Yang and RWBY rejoice at the good news, while outside the police station, Ozpin and Tai have a conversation, with RWBY reminding Ozpin of Team Stark. Team Stark, you might not be getting your own movie, but at least you were mentioned in Ice Queendom, which is more than I can say about main show RWBY. Regardless, RWBY is not the only one getting into Beacon on this night, as it transitions to a snarling Ursa Grimm in the moonlight. Blake is in this area, and she receives a notification that she's gotten into Beacon Academy as well. Then it quickly shifts to the Snee Mansion once more. Weiss is leaving for Beacon, and only Klein bothered to show up to see her off. Seeing her off, he asserts that Weiss will be able to become a great huntress and live up to the legacy of Master Nicholas and the Great Schnee family. Weiss decides to leave without waiting any longer, but she's happy that Klein came. Aww. Then it quickly cuts to RWBY putting flowers on Summer's grave and saying goodbye. Aww. With a quick cutaway to a building that looks like a docking bay for all the airships, taking all Beacon Academy students to the school. Blake and Weiss make it onto the airship first out of the main cast, while RWBY, Yang, and Tai say goodbye to each other, and they're off towards Beacon Academy, with cameos from the would-be Team Juniper, and shows the 4 girls that will eventually become Team RWBY together. And that's it for episode 1. So far, so fine. It was basically what I was expecting. Let's continue, shall we? Episode 2. It picks up almost right where episode 1 left off, with everyone still in the airship in the sky. A bunch of randomness is happening, with Weiss being determined to get on a good team in Beacon Academy, Nora running past her to exclaim to Ren that the bus is flying, on having motion sickness right behind Weiss. Then she spies Pyrrha Nikos and recognizes her from the box of Pumpkin Pete's marshmallow flakes. Across the way, Yang is excited that Ruby is attending Beacon with her. However, she wants her baby sister to make some friends. As she flashes back to episode 1 when Ty told her that, well, it's not good for Ruby to be always depending on Yang. Being determined to help Ruby have a friend, she drags Ruby around the airship looking for someone who's by themselves and looks bored. I think that might be an unintentional diss towards Ruby's social skills, but okay. Now she spots Blake Belladonna out of the corner of her eye and takes Ruby over to introduce themselves. This is essentially a reworked version of a Volume 1 scene. Location and pacing might have changed, but it's still as awkward as it was back then, with Blake telling them to go away in the nicest way possible. Obviously they don't, and Ruby goes into her reasonings for wanting to be a huntress in an attempt to keep the conversation going, and Yang hugs her, telling her how proud she is of her baby sister. This exchange even makes Blake smile. Aww. Unfortunately, the mood is shattered with the mention of the White Fang in the news, and the Sneetus company is apparently increasing security measures, which leads to Ruby and Yang gossiping about them, talking about the rumors that they're the most corrupt in the world and that they treat their workers like slaves. Of course, Weiss won't take that slander and teleports behind them, introducing herself as Weiss Nee, the company's heiress. Ruby tries to defuse the situation, but it obviously doesn't end well, with Weiss saying that they're just being fed the lies that the Faunus and the White Fang are spreading. Blake jumps in, further putting gasoline on the fire, saying that the Sneetus company has been exploiting the powerless and calls Weiss ignorant. She obviously won't take this slander and goes to confront Blake, but Yang stops her. What happens next is actually pretty funny, with Ruby suggesting that they all go shopping together. And Weiss, in this really fake, obnoxious voice, is like, oh yeah, wanna go shopping, talk about boys, yada yada. Ruby goes, really? And Weiss says, you've got to be kidding me. Never speak to me again. That was funny. With that ending horribly, the sisters are interrupted by Glinda and Ozpin appearing in a hologram, telling all the upcoming first years about the Emerald Forest exam, talking about the rules, objectives, and displaying a large holographic map of where the students will be going in the forest. Nice touch there, Chef. After all that, it cuts to the locker room, where Weiss is trying to get Pyrrha Nikos to join her team. This courting is interrupted by John Ark, who comes over and officially introduces himself, slyly asking if she thought he was her type. He gets a little too friendly with Pyrrha, which causes Weiss to get upset and try to pull him away, saying that nobody invited him to the conversation. Sorry, Weiss, you kinda deserve having your conversation being butted into, after sarcastically calling him cute on the airship. Then it is time for the Emerald Forest exam and everyone takes their places. They get launched off into the air like usual, and Glinda and Ozpin start talking to someone who just teleports into the scene, Xion Zaizen, and he seems to be hunting a special kind of Grimm. He says that it is here and, well, the test could get dangerous. Xion doesn't elaborate further and then leaves. Okay then. Back to the Emerald Forest exam, all the usual parties have paired up. Even though Weiss is stuck with Ruby, she's still determined to find Pyrrha and be on her team. But something odd happens while Weiss is dragging Ruby around. The entire screen goes reddish-orange as if something is watching them, and then whatever it is turns its focus towards John nearby. Well, that was weird. Other than that, the Emerald Forest exam mostly proceeds as normal, topping it off with a very cool and stylishly animated Nevermore Grimm fight. I can definitely see where the budget for episode 2 went. Then we get to the induction ceremony, where Team Juniper becomes Team Juniper, and Team Ruby is also announced as Team Ruby. Ruby is stunned, but Weiss looks clearly peeved at not being able to be team leader, turning away in a huff, but with the camera focusing in on a strange crack in her neck. And that's the way episode 2 ends. Some curious stuff for sure, but now it's time for episode 3. I will try my best to explain what the heck is happening. So, episode 3. It starts with Team Ruby finishing decorating their dorm room, then heading off to class. And at class, Weiss volunteers to take on a small Grimm. I'll say this fight is criminally well animated. Like seriously, this fight serves little to no importance in the grand story of Ruby. It did not need to look this good, but it does. Cool. Weiss also gets unnecessarily pissed off for Ruby trying to help during the fight. So she storms off after class, and in the courtyard she sees a peculiar sight. Someone with the exact same silhouette as her standing there, menacingly. Getting distracted by the rest of Team Ruby, who came to check up on her. When Weiss looks back, the person is gone. Weiss storms off again and Ruby goes after her, but loses her, saying out loud that she doesn't think she's fit to be a good leader either. Professor Ozpin appears behind her, giving her a pep talk and telling her to think about her responsibilities and how to carry them out. Meanwhile, Weiss sees Professor Port about becoming team leader. She gets told that her attitude is poor and that she needs to work on becoming the best person she can possibly be, which frustrates the girl to no end. moment. It then cuts to another class where John is getting manhandled by Carden. It then zooms into his neck where it looks like there's a weird mark that seems to be getting bigger. In the evening, Pyrrha gives John a pep talk and explains about Aura, which is basically the Volume 1 version of the Aura explanation. However, Weiss is eavesdropping on their conversation. She comes to the conclusion that in order to score more points, she needs to support her poor leader instead of becoming one herself. Weiss, I think you took the completely wrong lesson here. She then tries to sweeten the tensions between her and Ruby by making the girl some coffee, commenting on how exhausting it will be to be the perfect teammate. It cuts to John, who is looking at his glowing semblance hands. Upon hearing a voice, he turns around and then proceeds to get belittled and manhandled by himself. Well, regardless of whatever happened, it does not look good for poor John. It transitions to morning, and the rest of Team Juniper is wondering why John hasn't woken up yet. Pyrrha goes over to him, realizing that there's something wrong with his aura. And to their horror, they see that John has all these vine crack marks all over his back. It gets to when Team RWBY and Team Juniper are waiting in the dorm, and then Xian Zaizen makes himself known. By observing John for 2 seconds, he determines that this is his target. They move to a wide, spacious hall where Xian opens his case, which makes a cash register sound effect that I found amusing. He proceeds to exposition dump about why he's here. The Nightmare Grim has taken possession of John's body and that someone needs to enter the dream to kill it. Team Juniper volunteers to go in, and then they all get strapped into Xian's dream catcher thing, entering John's dream where he's being mocked by armor and being stared at by rabbit statues, turning into a little bunny boy. Aw, look at his ears. He's so cute. The rest of Team Juniper enters to fight the Nightmare Grim. They also somehow call Xian in the real world from his rotary phone. Okay then. After like 10 seconds of on-screen fighting, Team Juniper frees John from the Nightmare Grim. The little bugger tries to nope out of there like an xenomorph, but Xian catches it and puts it in a jar. Nice. And the little bugger turns back into his seed, which is certainly a very unique Grim that's more plant-like than anything else. Xian explains that because John's aura was still underdeveloped, that, well, the Grim couldn't grow all that much, which proved to be fortunate for him. Xian also said he sensed other nightmares in the forest and asked Glenda and Ozpin to tell the students to remain vigilant. With that over with, at Weiss's behest, Team RWBY heads to the Vital Festival grounds. They come across a destroyed store where one of the inspectors mentions that they're thinking that it's the White Fang who did this, to which Weiss curtly agrees. Her and Blake start fighting about it when all of a sudden someone calls out to stop that faunus. And that is when Anime Sun makes his appearance. Hello, you big, lean, beautiful monkey boy. I've missed you. Everything pretty much proceeds as normal from here on out, with Team RWBY chasing after Sun, bumping into Penny, Weiss and Blake getting into an even worse fight, and then Blake revealing she's a faunus and running off, running into Sun and telling him her whole life story, then agreeing to go check out the harbor to see who's behind all the dust robberies. Oh yeah, and Weiss's shadowy twin sister also makes an appearance, which I definitely know now to be the Nightmare Grim. RWBY and Penny also head to the warehouse after talking briefly, and then the anime builds up to an epic confrontation reanimated in glorious HD. But then cuts to Penny walking out of fire, which I actually laughed at this, but not for a good reason. Makes Team RWBY getting back together feel a bit hollow, to be honest. Despite that though, the episode leaves off with an enticing cliffhanger, with Weiss coming face to face with her Nightmare Grim doppelganger, who then possesses her, taking her into her nightmare world. And from the context with what happened with John, it's going to be way, way worse for Weiss. And that's the end of episode 3. Now, first impressions wise, the story is completely average right now, and sad to say I don't think I can confidently recommend this anime to anyone who hasn't at least watched RWBY Volume 1, as I think said viewers would be confused as to what's going on if they haven't. Episode 3's pacing going completely off the rails did not help in this regard, but for anyone who has watched RWBY in any capacity, I think there's some enjoyment to be had here from the recontextualized and changed scenes, like adding in characters that didn't exist before into these scenes to make them more emotionally driven. Now, Ice Queendom was actually my first time listening to a JP dub of RWBY, though I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to feel about the voice acting, but I found the voice acting to be rather pleasant. There's really no other particular way to describe it. It was just nice and soothing to listen to, especially with the titular main characters. This is just my personal opinion. I am no expert on VA performances at all. As for the animation, it's good. Now, it's no Kill la Kill, and I did see some stiff-looking scenes, but nothing that took me out of the anime. However, like the early days of RWBY, the fights go hard in the animation department. Keep it up, Shaft, and I might just be making some Ice Queendom AMVs. And now for the very best for last, the visuals. amazing. Like the art direction, the presentation, it's gorgeous. It's very pleasing to the eyes to look at. And can I just say it's refreshing to see RWBY with color again. The past few volumes have just been getting grayer and bleaker in color, so this was just like, wow. And the character designs, beautiful and pristine. From the moment I saw HUUUUKK was tapped to be character designer for Ice Queendom, I knew these characters were gonna look beautiful. And he did not disappoint. Seriously, if I was still watching RWBY the show, I would be wondering how the heck I would go from this to this. We even got Himbo Ozpin. And that basically sums up my thoughts on Ice Queendom's first 3 episodes. Right now, I'll give this anime spin-off a solid 6 out of 10 that could possibly be ruined by the pacing. If your story's not all there, then it doesn't matter how shiny the visuals are, how good the animation is, or how good the concept is, you're gonna lose me. If you guys want me to review the full anime, consider leaving a like on this video. If this video reaches 30 likes, then I will do a full series review of Ice Queendom. Aside from seeing the new designs and the preview, I will be going into the rest of the anime completely blind, so we'll see how that goes. Right Kitty is signing off.